Picture a couple. Let's call them Daniel and Priya. Both 38. He's an engineer. She's a solicitor. Between them, the household comfortable pulls in over 6 figures a year. It's a Sunday evening. They are at the kitchen table. The dishwasher is humming in the background. Priya is scrolling through the joint account. She frowns, quietly, not angrily. She turned to Daniel and said, "We earn so much. Why doesn't it feel like we are building?" He doesn't have an answer. Their cash flow is healthy. The bills are paid. The mortgage on track. The breathing is steady. The breathing was never the problem. The problem is that no one in the household can tell you with any precision where the last year's surplus actually went. If you can't tell me where your surplus went, you never really had a surplus. You had a leakage. At the end of the last episode, we said cash flow is the oxygen of your life and business. And we made a promise that once the breathing stabilizes, surplus stop being accidental and start becoming the raw materials of everything else. That promise is what this episode is about. And in the episode before that, your life already has a balance sheet. We walk through the document that quietly tells you where you actually stand, your assets, your liabilities, and your equities. The honest picture of what you have built and what you haven't. This episode sits between those two because cash flow keeps you breathing and balance sheet shows you where you actually stand. But it is surplus, what's left at the end of every month, that is the raw materials of everything in between. If you remember the wealth ladder from the last episode, I'm talking about the cash flow, surplus, assets, and freedom. Today we are on the second step of that ladder. Surplus is the bridge. Surplus is what flows from your cash flow into your balance sheet and slowly, quietly build wealth. If that bridge isn't built, your balance sheet doesn't grow. No matter how high your income climbs, income decides what you can afford. Surplus, on the other hand, decides what you can build. So let's go back to Daniel and Priya and let's be honest about what happened to their surplus last year. Conservatively, after tax, after the mortgage, after holidays, after groceries, after every direct debit has been paid and Deliveroo's orders, there was something like £40,000 left over. £40,000 of surplus. So where did it go? A surplus in household like theirs tends to live one of three lives. The first life, it leaks. About £14,000 of it went into the kitchen refurb, a nicer car lease, a few weekend trip, nothing reckless, nothing they could point out as a mistake, just lifestyle. Quietly inflation to absorb the room. The second life it hits, another 18,000 is still in the joint account. It has been there for 15 months. They call it their buffer. In real terms, once you account for inflation, it is quietly low value the whole time. The third life it works. It has a destination before it arrives. It does a job. For Daniel and Priya last year, that figure was 0. The first two feel safe. Only the third compounds. So why did this happen? Why did £40,000 disappear into nothing? The answer isn't laziness. It isn't lack of intelligence. Daniel and Priya are not careless people. The answer is that at every spending decision last year, they were asking themselves the wrong question. They were asking, can I afford this? Can I afford this is the question that almost every working professional asks. And it sounds responsible. It sounds adult. But it's a weak question because the truth is you can afford something and still weaken yourself. You can afford monthly payment and reduce your surplus. You can afford holidays and delay your reserve. You can afford the car and lose your investment capacity. You can afford the subscription and add another quiet leak. There is a better question. The better question is this: will this decision help me build assets, protect cash flow, or strengthen my life and business? That question changes everything. It does not mean you never spend. It does not mean you stop enjoying your life. It means you spend with awareness. You reward yourself, but you also pay your future self. You live today, but you build tomorrow. That's the balance. Let's talk about the excuse that actually cost years. There's another reason why surplus quietly disappears. It isn't spending, it's avoidance. And it shows up as the second mindset shift. This one might be harder of the two. A lot of capable people who are actually excellent at what they do, quietly tell themselves the same sentence: finance isn't my strength. And that sentence does more damage than almost any spending decision, because it doesn't just outsource the decision, it outsources the interest. It justifies passivity. It postpones the review. It turns indecisions into a personality trait. And 5 years compounds on the back of that one sentence. You don't have to become a finance person. You have to become someone who stops using that same excuse, "I'm not a finance person," as the reason to leave money on autopilot. That is the mindset shift. Once those two mindset shifts are in place, once you start asking yourself, "Can I afford this?" and start asking, "What would this build?" And once you stop hiding behind "finance isn't my strength," surplus begins to survive. The moment surplus survives, you face a new question. What is the surplus for? See, a well-run business never asks, "Do we have surplus?" It asks, "What is the surplus for?" And the answer every single time is one of three jobs: reinvest, reserve, return. 3 jobs. Every pound has to choose one. Job number 1 is to reinvest. In a business, reinvested capital is what builds future capacity: new systems, new people, new equipment. In life, reinvested surplus is what builds future choice: pension contribution, appreciating asset, skills that compound, equity in something, the things that grows while you sleep. Now, picture a second version of Daniel and Priya. Same couple, same income, same kitchen, but 5 years ago, they sat down and decided together that £600 a month would go into their stock and shares ISA, automatically, before anything else gets spent. Today, that version of them has a meaningful balance sitting in their account that they barely think about. The real Daniel and Priya has nothing. Same income, different posture, different results. High income buys comfort. Reinvested surplus buys freedom. 5 years doesn't feel like a long time, but in personal finance, 5 years is where small decisions become visible. 5 years later, Daniel and Priya's friends start making different choices. One family is an electrician. He has his own small crew. His wife runs the books. The household income is comfortable, reduces their working hours because their investment now covers part of their lifestyle. Another couple takes a 6-month career break. Someone else launches a second business. Someone else helps their children through universities without borrowing. And Daniel and Priya looks around and quietly wonder, how are people doing this? The answer isn't usually income. The answer is that somebody 5 years ago started turning surplus into assets, while others turned surplus into consumptions. The difference doesn't show up immediately. It shows up years later, when one person owns options and another owns memories of spending. Job number 2 is reserve. In business, a reserve is the buffer that lets a business survive a bad quarter without panic. In life, a reserve is not a vaguely defined saving. A reserve has a name, a separate home, a clear access rule. 3 to 6 months of essential outgoings, sitting somewhere boring, sitting somewhere accessible, sitting somewhere that does not get quietly raided for your holidays. Daniel and Priya had £18,000 in their joint current account, and they think of it as a reserve. It isn't. It is the same money that pays for the mortgage, the phone bill. By the 12th of every month, half of this is already committed. This is a float pretending to be a reserve. A reserve isn't dead money. A reserve earns you composure. The third job is return. This is the one Daniel and Priya has genuinely never thought about. In business, return is what gets back to the people the business exists to serve. In business, return is a slice of the surplus that goes back to the why. Not a charity, as architecture. The account you open for your sons, for your daughter before they were born. The support you quietly provide when your parents need help. The opportunities you created for people you love. Return is a name slide, decided in advance, because if you build wealth and never return any of it to yourself, you are not building wealth. you are hoarding capital. And the meaning quietly drains out. Wealth is not just about what comes back to you, it's about what flows through you. The point of building wealth is not to have more, it is to be able to give more to others and to your future self. Now let's go back to that Sunday evening. The kitchen table, the dishwasher humming, same couple, same income, 1 year from now. But this time around, £40,000 of surplus didn't just disappear. Before it arrived, it had already been split, quietly in advance, across 3 named jobs. A slice to reserve and a slice to return. Priya isn't frowning at a joint account anymore. She isn't, because finally there is something to say. Something is being built. Same money, different life. That is what it looks like when surplus stops being an accident. That is what it looks like when your life starts running like a business that's actually being run. If Daniel and Priya's Sunday evening sounds a little too familiar, leave a comment. Tell me which of those 3 jobs is one that you have been quietly neglecting. The question you raise often becomes future episodes. If this is the kind of conversation that you like to talk about, subscribe. There is a series being built here, 1 episode at a time. You may have caught the phrase in the previous videos of the life CFO, the person who looks at their own life the way a competent finance director looks at the company. In the next video, we look at what this person actually do week to week. Same income, same job, different operating system. One last thing, if this is the first video of mine that you are watching, start with the one before this. Cashflow is the oxygen of your life and business. It's the breathing this whole conversation rests on. It's right there.